Zach said to me, Mum, I really need to speak to you and tell you something. And I said, of course, darling, whatever, you can tell me anything, you can. And he said, Mum, I know it's law that kids have got to go to school, but I just hate it. I hate it that much. I can't cope. And I've been looking at ways to try and take my life because I just can't. Tough bit. I just can't face going anymore. Gosh, that's a really, do you know what? No one ever asks how you are. I'm really struggling with that question. Whew, wow.
And I know it's so hard because you're fighting this every day and you're looking after your child who's got complex needs, but you need to look, oh God, I'm getting emotional now because
I know.
But you need to look after yourself because it's oh God, it's so difficult.
We can see what doesn't exist and choose to rise above what is.
mumtomillionaire.com.
Hello and welcome back to the Mum to Millionaire podcast. This is where we highlight hard-hitting issues and help you to use your voice to reclaim your power. This episode today, this woman is so inspirational. She's so strong. She unfortunately has been through so many failings. And with stories like this, it's not, the child and parent doesn't get failed just once. It's literally they fail them once and then they fail them 100 times after that. So we're going to be, unfortunately, talking about all of that with our guest today. Her name is Marie and she's from Derbyshire. She is a beautiful warrior. Welcome to the show, Marie. Woo!
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for taking this time to speak to me, highlighting what has gone on for you in the hope that this helps other parents. Because, I mean, my son, with our story, we experienced kind of lots of different failings up until this point, but the major failing was where my son's secondary school called me up and said, he's not coming back. And then they just left him. And that was this is kind of what we're still going through now. And I know you can relate to so much of my story. And we've been speaking kind of before I pressed record, and there's so much to your story. It's hard. And I know a lot of what you've been through because we're kind of paralleling it in my story. And I still find it hard, Marie, to listen to everything that you've said about your son.
It's absolutely soul destroying. And it just keeps coming. And you wonder how you carry on. And it's just not good for your own mental health, really. You're supporting, he's 18 now, but a child, he'll always be my child. You're supporting that child with, diagnosis of autism, pathological demand avoidance, ADHD, trauma, tics, severe anxiety, and trying to keep it as level as you possibly can. And I find myself, as we said before, spinning plates. It wouldn't be so bad if it was just on occasion, but this has been constant.
Ongoing, yeah.
Since the age of 3 years old, really, battling.
How, even you mentioned mental health, and before we do get more into your story, how are you right now and how are you coping? Because again, I want to highlight the issue is, even if there is like positivity throughout the journey and the fight you've been on, you're still facing failings now, all these years on. So how are you and how are you coping with just even that day to day?
Gosh, that's a really, do you know what? No one ever asks how you are. I'm really struggling with that question. Whew, wow. Yeah, obviously not as good as I would like to think I am. It's hard. It's really hard. I don't even know how to answer that. I think I've lived life on the edge, trying to survive, trying to provide a future, opportunities, and everything else that goes with bringing up a child with additional needs. That you completely forget about you. You're very secondary.
Yeah.
I mean, I gave up my £50,000 career that I had to go, because I just simply hadn't got time. You know, got a child that was struggling to access any form of education. He was being sent home regularly. You know, people couldn't cope with him. You know, I was on a steep learning curve, learning all about disability, you know, finding myself trawling through website after website. Why is this happening? What can I do to change it? You know, and really struggling. And I have to say that it has its peaks and troughs. We have some huge highlights in our life because Zach proves them all wrong continually. You know, the paediatrician, when he diagnosed him at 3, even told me that to just get on with my life because he'd never amount to anything. And I'm just glad I didn't listen. You know, we've met some great professionals in our life who, well, you know, the odd one or two, should I say, you know, in particular, the psychiatrist from CAMHS, Anna, she's been amazing, and she's really fought for us. But quite honestly, I don't know how I cope, and I don't know how I really feel. I think I put it in a box, I put the lid on, and I carry on regardless. And it really scares me if that lid is allowed to come off. And that's the only way that I can explain how I feel. We've had some highs, a couple of fantastic companies who back us. Costain and National Highways have been amazing with Zach. We've had some real battles sourcing funding, and just people who understand you, talk to you as a real person, and don't see you as just being a problematic parent. You know, I'm really not a problematic parent. I just want the best for Zach. Always have had. And, you know, I'll research the law and try and tap into it to find out, what can we do? What is lawful? What is a lawful way of being able to provide my child with a future?
And do you know, there's so many things I want to highlight about your story. And even you just saying, actually, if I can go back to your mental health, like, and I know it's so hard because you're fighting this every day and you're looking after your child who's got complex needs, but you need to look, oh God, I'm getting emotional now because but you need to look after yourself, because it's oh God, it's so difficult. And I just want you to get, even if we talk after, but you need to get that support, because that is damaging. Like, don't suppress those emotions. Do what I do. And I know you do this as well. Just keep crying it out, letting your emotions out there, because there are, and there's so many people on Twitter as well, isn't there, that are in our positions. Keep talking. And I know you're talking to a lot of people, and why I wanted to get you on as well is because you're so strong, but you need to look after yourself, because, you know, you've been, and we're going to go into your story now as well, because you've been through so much. And I want people to understand that not only is Marie dealing with her child who's got a complex need, she then has to deal with a counsel. She then has to deal with all these other professionals that come in. There is a lot of judgment. There is a lot of blame and shame culture. There is a lot of labeling the parent, and you use that word already, the problem parent, the pair. And I don't know.
I am. And I'm the secret dread.
Yes,
I ask too many questions.
But this is the thing, all Marie's doing is asking questions, challenging people, and she's not out there being like aggressive and stuff. She's just fighting for her child to get support. And I know you mentioned it already, when it all started around the age of 3 and your son got this diagnosis, and then what happened from then trying to access education for him and going through that whole school process?
Okay. Yes, he was diagnosed at 3 years old. I'd already had a kind of a little bit of a setback at 18 months old when I took Zach to the doctors and said I'd got a few concerns that I thought he might have a touch of autism. There was something not quite right. I was basically then told to go away, silly woman, and there's nothing wrong with your child, adopt super nanny tactics. And that was it. I remember saying to him at the time, actually, you know, don't treat me like I'm an idiot, because I'm not. I think he even said to me, well, I couldn't give you a pill for it, even if it was. I mean, that in itself, coming from a GP, you know, I felt crucified inside. But I remember coming back with the the statement of, no, I wasn't expecting a pill, a point in the right direction, a bit of information, a bit of support wouldn't have gone amiss. But please don't treat me like I'm an idiot.
And obviously you've gone, I'm going to use this word a lot in this podcast, but the word to sum all of this up is frustration, because a lot of parents, sometimes even if we know something's a bit like, oh, we've got this gut instinct about something, sometimes it's hard for some people to go and get help and support. I used to struggle with asking for people, because again, you feel judged. I'm like, this must clearly be my fault that my son is behaving in this way. So you don't, so that first instant you went to your doctor and you're trying to get help, it's so unhelpful to hear comments like that. You want a solution, don't you? Just even sometimes want someone to be like, okay, look, let's put this plan in place. Let's go for these assessments, or not to be met with, I mean, again, there's so many parallels to our story. I think the first time I went to the doctor and I just really couldn't cope. And I think I was on the point of, I just don't want to be here. They just went, no, don't cry. Don't cry in front of your son. I went, this is just domestic abuse, because my ex-partner was abusive to me and my son. Again, there was no help and support. It's just like, oh, this is just domestic abuse. Like, she literally just kind of just shoved me quietly out of my office. And I was like, what? I just don't. And that's damaging, because a lot of parents then may not go and get help and support after
exactly that. And that was the point I kind of took from it. I mean, I didn't. I rang the health visitor, and I went back on the internet and I said, look, I've just gone through a tick list of 10 things, and he ticks all 10. So I know he's autistic, can he come and see him? And I was sobbing on the phone. But the flip side of that is that I've also heard of friends who have been in a similar situation, and they've actually taken comfort in the fact that the child isn't autistic. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank goodness for that. Okay, we're fine now. And then their child's gone on to really struggle in school, etc. Because, a professional person's told them it's okay and there's nothing wrong. So it's really worrying. And, I mean, it was a few years ago. Whether or not things have changed now, I really don't know. But at that point in time, no, it was horrendous. But anyway, we eventually got a diagnosis. It was, I think it's about 3.5. And actually the paediatrician sat there and basically said to me, well, now you know what it is. Go on, continue with your life, carry on. It's never really going to amount to anything. Go and pop him in the local diagnostic nursery. Here's a bottle of amitriptyline, take between 2 and 10 mils, see you in 6 months and let me know how you get on. Oh yes, a new social carer's respite. Oh right, okay. I remember 6 months later going in to see this particular paediatrician, and him asking me how I got on with the amitriptyline. And I said, oh, well, I haven't given it to him. And he said, why not? If you're not going to listen and take my advice, what's the point of you being here? And I said to him, it's not that I've not listened. It's not that I'm not taking your advice. I've listened very carefully to what you've had to say. But I just really don't think that at this point in Zach's life, he's only 3, that I want to really start giving him amitriptyline. What other interventions are there that can be done to help him? It's quite shocking, actually, because, I could have killed the poor lad. He's a baby. He was 3 years old.
Wow.
Luckily, I'm me. Thank goodness I'm me. And actually, so many professionals have said to me, thank goodness this child was born to somebody like you.
Oh, do you know, I was talking about this in our podcast episode last week, and this lady is amazing. Her child's got GDD, global developmental delay, and I'll link the episode below. But I was saying to her, say it to you as well, your child chose you to be his parent, because you're a mate. Do you know, I keep crying in these episodes. Sorry, I can't help that. But do you know what it is? I feel, because there's so many people like you who have got a story to tell, to highlight the trauma and the major failings that these kids go through for so many years, and it's so unneeded. And then even as you as a parent, is like, who's helping you as a parent? And it is frustrating that you have to keep dealing with these things. It really is. And I know, and you know, we've been speaking now for I don't know how long, but we've only touched on, like, your son's 3. Like, there's a whole your son's, you know, he's
the journey
18.
had only just begun. And you know, it's quite awful, but I can remember saying to a friend, I don't think I could go through it all again. Somehow you find the strength to carry on. But actually, when I look back, the thoughts of going through it all again, I don't think I'd manage it.
No.
And I think, you know, that's what probably has turned me into the person that I am now, wanting to try and help other people. When I hear people just starting out on the journey, it's soul destroying, because you just know what they're in for. You know what they're up against.
Yeah.
And you know, I posted something on Twitter only yesterday, and it was about, you know, it was a banner about professional people. You know, there's a parent in a hole, a professional person looking, you know, oh, well, there's a waiting list. Oh, well, we can't give you a leg up. And then, you know, there's another additional needs parent. Oh, I've seen that hole before. I know how to get you out. Come on, let's dig. You know, and it's also true, because and Twitter's been amazing for me.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a nice little group, and I've got quite a following now of, I think, just over 1,600 people. And that's only happened really in the last 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
And it's nice not to feel like you're an alien.
Oh, God,
and it's nice to share stories, and it's nice to keep each other up there. And for the people who are new on their journey, you know, we can share information that that we've gained in the last, goodness knows, 16, 18 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's a steep learning curve when you're faced with a situation like I was, and I'm sure you was. You know, it's how do you get from here to there? How do you navigate the system?
And I think I want to pick up on 2 things, actually, even with, again, when parents are listening to this, and if you're struggling at the moment, it's question these professionals, because you're the parent at the end of the day. You don't have to accept what they're saying to you. Always question, always challenge, try and stay as calm as possible, because you want to be seen, and you are anyway, that reasonable parent. But what Marie just said then as well was like Twitter. I hadn't used Twitter for years, and when this happened to my son and they just pushed him out of school, I went to Twitter, and I've found that's how we've connected. And so many people that come on the podcast now it's such a supportive community. If you've got a question, put it on Twitter, tag a few people in, someone will respond to you. And I can't recommend Twitter enough for that. And just follow Marie, follow all these people that have got a wealth of information, because I felt so overwhelmed. And this, I'm only a few months in properly too. I mean, we've had challenges in the past, but this is just on another, this is on another level. And just hearing women like yourself and all the other women on there, that again, is, I call you the unsung heroes. It's the women who probably will never get, it's true that you'll never get that airtime. And I know no one's doing it to get that airtime, but does that make sense? It's like
it's just raising awareness, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know, you see the celebrities come on TV, but you know, then again, I've tweeted celebrities, I've written to them. You never really hear anything back, you know. And it's great, the fact that these people are being ambassadors, but what they really need is to get some real proper mums on there who are feet on the street, who aren't well known. You know, who say it as it is. And you know, I mean, Zach's autistic, but he's genetically challenged with having me anyway, because I've always been a very say it as it is person. I mean, I like to call myself assertive, you know. It's just a way of that's just my way, I'm afraid. And I think, you know, where you have the tears, when I have the frustrations, I think I get quite uptight, and instead of crying, I probably get a little bit more forthright and a little bit more assertive.
More assertive. This is
just trying to get my point across, to try and get rid of the frustrations. You know, I have no other explanation for it.
But I think that's great.
The journey's tough. The journey's tough, and it's real. You know, thank goodness. You know, we have the highs that we do, because I always say it's like being on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
1 minute things are going great, and the next minute, oh wow, do you hit a dip? And then you come to the end of the ride and you're left quite dizzy by it all.
Yeah, and it's so unpredictable as well. Like have, like you said, these bursts of, yes, someone's listened to me, I'm getting the support, and then you encounter another failing, and I'm like, oh, and again, I think all of us have this in common. You don't want to be seen as that parent that is putting in the formal complaints, but we have to, because if you don't do it, the system is going to keep staying the same.
It's not going to change, is it?
Never going to.
And actually, you know, when I worked in telecommunications for 20 years, you know, these things wouldn't have been allowed to happen. It's quite shocking looking at the way some of the local authorities do respond to you, and education provisions. You know, it's really left me speechless. It's opened up a whole new world for me, disability. Yeah. But it's quite scary. It is. You know, it's almost like an establishment of, it's always been this way, it needs to stay this way. You know, but actually, when you've got a neurodiverse child such as mine, you need to think out the square. You have to think outside the square. They're not going to go down a traditional route. By goodness, you know, I tried. Infant school, we had a really good infant school, and Zach could really do joined-up writing before he left infant school. The problems really started in junior school. I mean, he was the only child, I think, in 3 years to get all 15 out of 15 spellings correct in a week, for 3 years. And they were tricky, you know, professionalism, successfully. They weren't easy words. Most adults would probably struggle to spell them, to be fair. But, you know, they were making him miss his breaks because his writing wasn't small enough. So, you know, you've got an autistic child here who's having to miss his breaks for being the best at the spellings week on week. And the more he missed his breaks, the bigger his writing got, till the stage that it was about, 1.5 inches.
Wow.
And
this is the thing with...
And they wouldn't listen to me, you know, please listen to me. You know, this my child will not. So I just said to him, so look, you know, when are we going to go back to writing normally? I know, you know, what they're doing. It's not right. Mummy's had a word. You know, and he said, well, I'll do it on my birthday, which was about 3 weeks away. So I thought, okay. And do you know, the ironic thing was, I was stood in the playground, and I remember him coming out and turning, I can't remember which teacher it was in particular, but he turned around and he said, Miss, are you excited? He says, my birthday tomorrow, I'll be returning back to my usual handwriting. You know, the PDA side of children is, in my opinion, is just so much harder to deal with than autism. And actually, I was taught to deal with him in a typical autistic manner by early years. And actually, looking back, now I've studied PDA and read the books and done the research, everything they were teaching me was wrong. PDA kids can't cope with simple instructions. They find you patronising if you treat them like that. You know, they're quite highbrow. And so therefore, everything that I was doing, they were teaching me wrong. You know, and even Zach, well, you know, turns around to this day, why did you come out with this, Mum? Why did you say that? You know, and they don't forget anything either.
Oh, God, no, these kids don't. But do you know what? You did what you thought was right at the time, and you tried your best at the end of the day. And, you know,
I did.
You
know,
did.
I used to sit on annual reviews, and I used to challenge, well, every single professional around the table. You know, I've even seen a head teacher and a teacher arguing with my child about using an aesthetically different coloured pencil to write with. They wrote with the standard yellow and black one. This one that Zach wants to write with was red and black. He'd do all his work if he had the red and black one. No, in an annual review, they start arguing with him.
Wow.
It wrote the same, you know, and you know,
That
he couldn't cope without having 2 sausages on his dinner. They're reasonable adjustments. They should be doing these things.
And that's not gonna change anything. If a child wants to write in red, who cares? At least that just pick your battles.
He actually wrote in pencil. It was just aesthetically, it was just a different coloured pencil. It was a pencil, but it was a red and black covering instead of yellow. Oh my God,
so that's
even worse.
Wow.
Yeah. But unfortunately, what happens is the resistance builds up and builds up and builds up, and the anxiety builds up to a point that they can't access school. And that's where we ended up. They put behavioural specialists who weren't particularly trained and didn't understand autism or PDA, and that's dangerous. And he ended up out of school, and we were awaiting a place for a specialised unit that was being built in the neighbouring village, and we thought that might be the answer to our prayers too. That ended up being a disaster. He went for 2 mornings a week. They wouldn't take him any more than that. I'd get phone calls. He's locked himself in the loo. He's been going on about the squeaky boiler all day. They didn't understand autism. They might have been brilliant at dealing with the average special needs child, but autism and PDA is different. It's very, very different. And the staff were just turning to me, what do we do? How do we handle this? At the end of the day, I'm just a parent.
You're a mum that's already dealing.
Yeah, I was his mum, but again, you come up against the adversity to the point that Zach ends up out of school for a year again, and then have the commissioning manager come and see me eventually, after I think a stiff letter was written from CAMS on our behalf to say, what's happening with this child? He needs educating. What are you going to do?
Do you know what? When I talk to parents like yourself, and I do it as well sometimes, you'll kind of say something and gloss over it, but not the other people don't realize the impact. I mean, my son's only been out of school for 3 months now, and and he is past breaking point. Like it's different, and it doesn't seem like a big deal maybe until you're in that situation. So when you just said a year out, I was like, I don't know how both of you did that, being a year out of school, because that's hard. That's really difficult to cope. So you went through that whole experience, and then you managed to do something called personal budgets, isn't it?
Just before the personal budgets, I went to a private autistic school, which was government funded. And I thought that was the answer to all my prayers. And that failed too. He just was struggling and made himself sick with anxiety on the way there, whilst we were there. I was beside myself, no sooner had I got home that, I'd have another phone call. And that eventually, I mean, the reason I'm mentioning that is because that was really the trigger to me realising quite how bad this situation had got with Zach. Because one day on the way home from school, so safeguarding issues in that school as well that don't appear to have got reported. But yeah, on the way home from that school, and you have to excuse me with this bit because this always gets me, Zach said to me, "Mum, I really need to speak to you and tell you something." And I said, "Of course, darling, whatever, you can tell me anything, you can." And he said, "Mum, I know it's law that kids have got to go to school, but I just hate it. I hate it that much. I can't cope. And I've been looking at ways to try and take my life because I just can't." Tough bit. I just can't face going anymore. As you know, I can never say that sentence without breaking down. So excuse me a minute.
God. That's it's so I'm sorry. Do you know what? It's so hard, and I'm sorry. It's
the worst thing. You think it's bad getting a diagnosis, that is the worst thing you can hear from your child. And I've had so many messages from people, parents who haven't been as lucky as me. Their child didn't tell them, they just went and did it. And I can't begin to imagine, because it devastated me just knowing that he was even thinking like that. And I knew I had to take drastic measures. You know, I rang a psychiatrist at CAMS. I think we were in a lay-by at the time, both sobbing. You know, to hear stuff like that, it's soul destroying. And I knew I had to think outside the square. And yeah, you know, you've gone on to the, what did I do? I basically did research, and I'm okay again now, I've calmed down. Access the an educational personal budget, see whether, and that is available for children who've got an education, health and care plan. And it gives you the flexibility to be able to run it yourself, because he wasn't getting the therapy. He wasn't able to access the therapy that it was offered at the independent school. Because not only do they have to be speech therapists and occupational therapists, they have to be amazing at what they do. They have to understand autism, they have to understand PDA, because the therapy, if they don't understand the child, they're unable to access.
Yeah.
Zach never really had any therapy, or very little therapy. And again, you know, schools would say to me, you know, this particular therapist because of this reason. Oh, well, I'm sorry, that's the one who's been allocated. You know, what is all that about? Oh. You know, why do you have to have a battle with that? Why don't they say, oh, thank you, Mrs. Martin, for alerting us. We'll see what we can do. So we can access the therapy.
I think once,
so going back to the...
Sorry, what I was going to say, once you've got a child with special educational needs or mental health issues, just something that's different from being the normal child, you go to school, you come home, then you realize you don't know this exists. I mean, when I was growing up, you don't know, do you? Until it happens.
No idea.
I mean, even though I had issues with my son in primary school, they weren't this like, I didn't know this existed. I
think we're quite unusual. But, you know, then Zach is quite unusual. You know, I've had people who've got autistic children who've said to me, oh God, how'd you cope? And I said, well, you know, you're such as is autistic, and yeah, you're on a different level. How do you function?
Well, do you know what? Your son is so special, and so are you. So you've been you know, you're here.
Not convinced he's special. I'm not convinced.
No, you definitely are.
I'm just a mum trying my best.
But you're an amazing mum, and I think you and your son are here for a reason, to highlight, you know, what is going on with this system, to break and to change it. You are that voice that needs to be heard, and I really want to highlight to parents watching this that, you know, maybe you're watching this and your child, you know, doesn't have any kind of additional needs. What I do want to really emphasize is that if you do know a parent that is struggling, if you see that child label as naughty, or you're like, oh, that boy's naughty boy, or he's hurting this person, do you know what? Go up to that parent and see if they need help, because you'll never know the truth until you speak to that parent. And I'm going to get emotional now retelling your story, but for Marie's son to go through all of those failings and then get to the point where he doesn't want to be here, like, that is years of people, and I call it neglect, and I don't care if people just, but I call
almost,
it
I use the word abuse, and I know that's a strong word, and it's not done directly, it's done indirectly. I don't think people realise the impact when they're being shouted at school, when they're being challenged for using a different pencil. It actually turns into abuse for a child who just simply can't cope with that. And I always say to people, you know, imagine, treat us, think of us as people. You know, when you write to us, when you treat us, you treat us like we're a commodity. You know, we're real people. We have
Yeah.
The head teacher at junior school, you know, would you, you know, it's the more he fitted in, the more they expected of him. You know, and he used to mask a lot at school. And then, you know, and I hear this from a lot of parents as well, masking, you know, school don't see the behaviour.
What is that?
No, they won't do.
Can you explain what? Sorry, can you? I was going to say, can you explain what mask? Because I only heard of this word literally about 2 weeks ago. I saw again.
Oh, really?
And I was like, oh, what's so? Can you? What is masking when a child does that?
Okay, masking. It's the way they manage to cope with their anxiety. Basically, they try to fit in, and they don't want to draw attention to themselves, and they try to normalize their behavior as much as possible. So they pretend everything's okay, and then when they finally get home in and keep the behavior, you know, in context with everybody else, then it's almost like they explode. It's almost like shaking a bottle of fizzy pop and taking the top off. And lots of parents speak to me about that. And Zach used to.
They will act in a certain way to fit in at school, but as soon as they come home and they're in that safe environment and they're with their parent, whoever's the carer, then it's like bang, it just comes out. And wow.
I mean, we used to spend hours on the trampoline, kept my weight down as well, because I'd go on with him.
They always find the positives, at least.
Just get that energy out of them. You know, we had silly songs we used to sing together, and strangely enough, at 18, you know, we still sing the silly songs when we're out together on occasion. You know, Zach would probably kill me for that, so I probably shouldn't have mentioned that. But yeah, it's I
think we all sing silly songs. It's all right. Let's make it it's normal. It's normal.
Yeah. With your child, when you've got a child such as ours, I think it's on a different level. You have to get to really know them. You kind of know what they're going to do before they do it, because you can't afford for things to go wrong, and because the repercussions are so bad, and to get back to status quo takes, you know, it's too long. So you tend to live your life walking on eggshells a little bit as a parent, and just making sure, you know, you don't have to be one step ahead, you have to be 3 or 4.
Yeah, you've got to be so many steps ahead, and you've got to have different plans. You've got to like, and it is that heightened, again, a lot of people don't realize we're always on heightened anxiety ourselves as a parent, because you could have that plan to go out and then something just happens just before you go. They can get triggered. A word can be said. It could be, I mean, sometimes with my son, he'll just have a flashback to a memory that happened to him. And then it's just like, and if he doesn't tell me in that moment, even now I'm still learning about my son, because something what happened, and then I get frustrated, and then we go in a circle, then I feel bad. I'm like, oh my God, why did I shout or say this word to him? And then you go in this, and it's like, oh,
I know.
And then you
continually beat yourself up, don't you? You know, internally, because, you know, I should know better. I should know by now. How long have I been doing this?
Yes.
Why do I still get it wrong? I mean, you know, Zach's still not forgiven me for cubing his cheese as opposed to grating it at 5 years old. You know, why did I lie to him about having Santa Claus to let all these children down in the end? You just set me up for a fall. You know, I haven't got the answers. You know, he's so logical, but he's also so literal. And, you know, and the disability kind of works against everything.
Yeah.
So
it is finding, you know, we're taught one way of life, but actually there's a million different ways to live our lives, for these children to live their lives. Do you know what, Marie? I could talk to you all day, because there is so much we still need to talk about. So I'm probably going to get you on again if it's okay. But before you go, I do want to always give that positive hope to parents. Unfortunately, yes, there's so many failings, as you've heard from this is just one parent. There is thousands of them up and down the UK. But because Marie just fought outside that box, and yes, she still has to fight with the council to get that help and support. But because she fought out inside the box, can you tell us that your son is now with this they sound amazing, this company who are supporting him. He's doing he's doing work, is that right? He's doing work experience for them at the moment. Can you explain to us so we can have a positive kind of experience to share?
Because I think it is important, and it goes hand in glove with thinking outside the square. So at the time that Zach hit his worst and I'd applied to have an educational budget, I was thinking, what can I do? What can I do to change things? What can I do? What's going to be positive? And I remembered back to 9 or 10, and we visited a career day that they kind of do for all the junior school kids. The junior school weren't going to take Zach. I offered to go with him because they didn't feel like they could handle him. And we met, had a wonderful presentation by a company called Costain. And all the other kids weren't really particularly interested in this structured engineering and smart motorway type operation. But Zach had an absolute fascination. And he'd noticed that a bridge, I think at junction 30 on the M1, had got a different footing, or it was something like that. Anyway, he asked the question, and they hadn't got the answers. And they said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And anyway, he gets up and anyway, he shows them. "Okay, Zach, well, we'll find out." They were great people. I didn't really expect a response for some reason. Things rarely go right for us, but in this case it did. A couple of weeks later, I had a lovely response from a gentleman called Chris Hyde, who worked for Costain at that time, giving Zach all the answers and the reasons why this footing was different, and congratulating him on basically being outstanding at structural engineering at such a young age, and giving us an open-ended visit invitation. So I was kind of thinking, this is a few years later. I've offered it to various educational settings and nobody's taken us up on the offer. I wonder if this guy's still around. So I rang Costain head office and asked, and he was. And I said, "Is he still on the same email address?" She said, "I'll put you through to his mobile." I was like, oh. What do I say here?
Oh, okay.
Anyway, it was answer phone. So I left a message saying, "Don't know whether you can remember a little kid called Zach a few years ago, blah, 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 blah. Here's my number if you can help. I'm his mum." Anyway, Chris duly rang me back and said, "Oh, how could I ever forget Zach? No one's going to forget Zach. He's amazing. Maria, I thought you was his teaching assistant. I never realised that you were his mum. Well done." I've made some contacts, and a guy called Richard Paddy is going to be getting back to you, and he's going to try and put something together. And Richard put together the most amazing VIP day for Zach to visit. I told him, Richard is absolutely brilliant. He's got a background of always wanting to help with children and underprivileged, that type of thing. And he put the most amazing day together for us, where we went to visit the Smart Motorway Scheme at junction 24 to 25, I think, Zach would correct me. And they were absolutely astonished at the knowledge that Zach had got. They couldn't believe it. It was incredible. He walked into a room and he would look at a map and he would say, "Oh, you missed that bit there. And what about, why have you changed those light fittings from this to that?" And he was using all these technical terms, and they're all a bit,
They're probably like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I think they really were. And we went through a few departments, and Zach made such an impression that I can't remember Stuart's actual title, but Stuart Atkin was amazing, and Danielle Lawrence, and they rang back within a week, saying, "We've got a virtual reality training course going on here." And I said, "Oh, we need to get Zach back in." So Richard sorted all that for us. "Oh, can you come now?" I was like, yeah, we can come whenever. And that then turned into something really major. And, you know, Zach was going around doing work experience at various different offices. Then they moved down to Junction 15 offices. And he was going down and doing work experiences and visits there. Then they introduced Zach to Highways England, who have now become National Highways. And, you know, the sponsors there, Paul Unwin, Sean Pidcock, you know, were absolutely amazed by Zach. Sean even turned round to Paul and said, you know, can I employ 16-year-olds? Zach was 16 at the time. You know, he's amazing. And to hear, you know, people say that about your child. Incidentally, Zach was more interested in getting out to get the jelly and ice cream that was on the Christmas picnic than actually in acknowledging the fact that, you know, Highways, National Highways directors just trying to offer him a job. But that's autism for you. But they were just smiling, they were just laughing. You know, really nice people. And I remember Paul Unwin saying, you know, Zach, there's loads of people walk through that door and they think they're the best thing since sliced bread. Have to say, you've no idea, but you really are. This is a kid that, you know, we fought for provision for support. And actually, you know what, I've always said, Zach's either going to be an absolute entrepreneur, a genius, or worryingly, you know, he could go down the wrong path if it's not managed. But yeah, that's our feel-good factor. And, you know, Zach's carried on doing work with them remotely. Ben Earl's fantastic at Costain as well.
And that's such an important story to tell.
Yeah,
that as well.
Well, it's pulling the positive point out of lots and lots and lots of negatives, overcoming adversity. Think outside the square. Your mum, you know best. You've become the expert on your child. I just think, you know, Zach and I make quite a good team. You know, don't get me wrong, it's tough at times being Zach's mum, and with autism, you don't get an awful lot back sometimes. You know, but then again, you know, I'm the safe person. I'm the person that's going to be there no matter what. But I have to take my hat off to Costain and National Highways, because they've been amazing. I mean, even to the point that, you know, we were on their website and Twitter in April celebrating World Autism Day. And actually, we're doing a presentation on the 9th of December. We've been asked to go back and do a presentation to celebrate International Disability Day. Zach's put a presentation together about his experiences, and which is amazing. And I've also done one just on as being the parent, really, and you know, living life as a parent. So they'll be all on my Twitter. I mean, I'm known as I think I'm Send Warrior Mum Making a Difference or something like that. So if anyone
your Twitter thing up now, actually, so everyone can go.
Yeah. So if anyone, I'll be trying to share that with as many people as possible. But yeah, if there's one message that I would like to get across, yes, it is tough. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you do have to hold people to the law. Yes, you will be unpopular. It's really hard to take feeling unpopular, because actually I've always been classed as being a popular. I'm a socialite. I'm a popular person.
You're a lovely lady.
I had lots of success in my former life, and actually, and I think that's the hardest bit, really, of achieving so much, overcoming so much adversity. You know, you're not getting paid for it. You're doing it for the love. Yeah. If I worked this hard.
Oh, your voice, your voice.
So keep going, be kind. You know, I know what it's like for your child to be excluded from parties and not be invited. You know, it does get better, and you will have wins. And if there's one thing I've all, you know, tying a shoelace, every other parents take for granted. You know, it's taken us 18 years and we still can't do it very well. You can go and save Costain 100 grand. You know, he struggles to tie his shoelaces at 18.
Do you know what your voice kept cutting out there, but I'm sure you were saying before that if you work this hard, you'd probably be like a millionaire, a billionaire at this point. But you know what? I just know there's a bigger plan for all of this, and everything is going to work out. Your son is incredible. And again, I just want to put that positivity out there. And Marie already summed it up. I mean, all these failings happen. However, cling on to those positives and keep going, because there's that is it called the National Highways? Is that right? National Highways Company. They've been like, it sounds like they've been your angel and ray of light. And I want to, number one, I want to say thank you to that company. And I really hope more companies.
And to Costain, because that's really where our journey began.
Yeah, I want them, other companies to just, if they can take on, even if it's 1 or 2 children, you're changing lives, you're giving them a future, because they've been failed by the education system over and over and over again. And I want parents to hear this story as well. And even if it feels like everyone is against you, as Marie has done, think outside the box, call up people, build up the confidence, and just, you've got nothing to lose. Just if your child is interested in history or whatever, it is, call a museum up, just get involved in different companies, because I think we've said this before, it is a numbers game.
Tapping into their special interests. I mean, Zach won't do anything remotely educational, so to speak, although, recently in the last 12 months, he's gained his qualifications for Excel. He can program spreadsheets, he's passed his theory driving test, he's passed his practical driving test. All things that actually I didn't know he would ever do. And if I'd have listened to people in the early days, he wouldn't have achieved any of it. Zach now he loves pylons, electricity pylons. He now builds pylons on his blender course, and gives them to people to use in games. It's incredible, really.
It is incredible.
And it's a real credit to me.
Oh, and you are a credit to him. So I just want to encourage you to keep going. You are the definition of a true, beautiful warrior. Like, you really are. And I hope just so many parents are inspired by listening to you today. You are incredible. Thank you for taking this time, because as we all know, time isn't on our side when we've got, all these things to deal with. So just thank you for sharing your story. Go and follow her on Twitter, ask her any questions. We're all here to support as well. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you.
No, thank you for the invite. And I just hope it can help other people and give them a little bit of hope. I know how it feels to be lost. And I know how you sometimes, every time, you can't see the you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes you get halfway down and every now and again somebody blows it out.
Oh God, yeah.
Relighting that candle, and be kind and stick together and find other people in your position, because we do understand. And no matter how busy we are, we'll sit there at midnight and help.
Yes, it's such a supportive community. So thank you so much. If you've not subscribed to the podcast already, please make sure you do. We've got a brand new episode every single Thursday with a frigging fantastic, inspirational women just like Marie. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify. I need to go now and drink some water. I can't speak properly. Spotify or iTunes, and head over to the blog as well, because we'll have a recap of today's interview with Marie as well. mumtomillionaire.com. Finally, make sure you reclaim your power, use your voice, and go out there and make a change. Help yourself and help other people. We'll see you in the next episode.